Good evening, and thank you very much, all of you, for coming to this Artists Roundtable on our brand new production of Verdi's Rigoletto. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our guests tonight. First of all, our Gilda, soprano from Slovakia, making her debut with us. But I haven't given them your name yet. And I practiced. She made her Metropolitan Opera debut as the Queen of the Night, and she sang at the Vienna State Opera as Gilda in this role, and the Slovak National Theatre as Olympia, Violetta, Norina, Amina. Of course, singing all over the world is soprano Ljubica Vargicová. And to help her out, her translator is Alena Botson. Okay, welcome. Will you sing with us as well? You sing for us too.
Can I just say one sentence?
Yes.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy that somebody from my country is coming to San Diego. So I am so proud of my country right now, and I will be next few weeks, because we have only 5 million people in my country, and we have great artists, and Ljubica is one of them.
Great, thank you. And of course, the man who needs no introduction, but I will give him one anyway. He was last here as in Tosca, conducting Tosca, Eduardo Müller. And we have a real international cast. Sitting next to Maestro is a tenor from Albania, making his debut with us, but he has also sung the Duke at La Scala, at Munich, at San Francisco Opera. His roles include Riccardo in Ballo in Maschera, Cavaradossi, and Alfredo in Traviata. The tenor singing the Duke, Giuseppe Gipali. And returning to us, baritone from Georgia, last here as Simon Boccanegra in the title role. His debut at the Met was as Nabucco. He sings regularly at the Vienna State Opera, Royal Opera House, the Paris Opera. Again, all over the world. We're delighted to welcome back Lado Atanelli. And hailing from Armenia, Armenian bass, he was last here as Fiesco for Simon Boccanegra. And a member of the Deutsche Oper Berlin has sung at La Scala, at Covent Garden, Aruchun Kochinian. And of course, Aruchun is singing the role of the assassin, Sparafucile, and I don't think that I needed to tell you that Lado is singing, of course, the title role of Rigoletto. And then finally, way back there at the end, our American singer, who was last here as Rosina in Il Barbiere, recently made her Met debut as Orfeo in Gluck's Orfeo de Euridice, substituting for Stephanie Blythe. Had a wonderful, wonderful performance, a kind of a stellar performance. Mezzo-soprano Kirsten Chavez as Maddalena. So here we are. We've got some translators to help. Eduardo will help in English as well as in Italian, and we'll move along. Just a little bit of background, of course, for this opera. I think most of us are familiar with the opera. It's one of those operas that most of us know. It's a favorite opera. It's one of the standard repertoire pieces. It was based on a play, a French play by Victor Hugo. The play was about the reign of Francis I of France. He had a very salacious court. We would say in Italian, il re è lascivo. Lascivo. See? Lascivo. And so many awful things took place on stage in the play that it lasted one night. The king's censors shut it down after one night. And then in 1850, Verdi decides this is the story that he wants to turn into an opera for the Teatro La Fenice in Venice. He had difficulty with the censors as well, and many things had to be changed. So Il Re becomes Il Duca, Triboulet becomes Rigoletto, although he's still a deformed jester, and an evil man, as Victor Hugo calls him at first. You know, we don't like Rigoletto at the beginning, and then we begin to discover him as a father, and our ideas about him change a little bit. So Verdi and Piave had a difficult time getting it staged and past the censors, but they did after making all these changes. The public loved it. The public loved it. The critics, not so much. But it does have great tunes, great melodies, of course, many of which we know practically by heart. So, we all pretty much know Rigoletto. What I'd like to do is start with the singers, and I'll start at the end first. What I want you to do is describe the character that you're singing. So, Kirsten, if you would simply describe for us Maddalena. I think most of us know the story and who these characters are, and as we go through each of the singers talking a little bit about the character, then hopefully the story pieces will fall together and we can continue talking about the music and about the opera. Kirsten, what about Maddalena?
Well, I hope that many of you have seen the opera already, so you're not too surprised when I say that she's a bit of a slut. But she's a slut with a heart. And this is the key, friends, this is the key. This is the reason that the Duke survives, because in fact, I think she's probably never quite fallen in love before. Maybe she didn't really this time, but she really likes him. She's caught off guard, and she ends up begging her dear old brother here to just, you know, not kill him. Let's just not kill him this time. You know, let's kill the old hunchback dude instead. Of course, he's outraged at that idea, but because he has his honor. But in any case, Maddalena is only on for the last 20 minutes of the show. I sit in my dressing room and listen to glorious music and then come out and involve myself in various prostitute-y things and killing things. It's all very exciting. And then I go home. It's great. It's a great night at the opera. But in any case, it is kind of fun. Lotfi and I were talking about Maddalena the other day, and he, probably because he was talking to me, said that she's one of his favorite characters. But the reason being is that she actually kind of has a dramatic arc in her short 20 minutes of visiting you all. And she basically goes through, you know, a transformation as she starts out just doing her regular thing, and then she's like, well, I kind of like this guy more than I thought I would, and then she kind of digs inside herself and does what she can to convince her brother to come around. And lo and behold, it works. I mean, it's too bad for Gilda, but whatever, you know. The mezzo-soprano gets what she wants, and really that's what's important, isn't it?
And the soprano dies, yeah. Aruchun, what about Sparafucile? Tell us about him.
Yeah, I guess Kirsten told already everything, because we are, in this opera, we are like a family, family couple, but not husband and the wife, but brother and sister. But something like a little bit Lady Macbeth and Macbeth, because they are very, very close to each other. And my character is a professional killer. It's not funny. I have to say it's really thanks God that it's for most of us, it's really one of the dangerous and one of the horrible, let's say, professions, but not for Sparafucile. But Sparafucile, the way how he's on the stage and how he manages himself is the very, very cool and very quiet way. He appears in the beginning, right in the beginning of the opera, after the first scene and beginning of the second scene, is a wonderful, very short duet between my character and Rigoletto. But I have to say this duet is very important, because exactly after that duet, where Sparafucile offers his service to Rigoletto, Rigoletto starts to think about if maybe this could be the way to revenge Duke, and to pay a person who will kill him. So I mean that the appearance of Sparafucile, that's why it's very important for the whole plot of the opera. If he will not appear in the beginning of the second scene, then probably Rigoletto will do something else. But for me, it's important to tell you that really, you know, this way of existing in life, that you are a killer, and this is a profession like any other profession. You know, there are doctors, there are teachers. Yeah, I'm a killer. It's okay. It's just okay. And how we talk also with Lotfi, I like him very, very much. We did already Simon Boccanegra together, and now Rigoletto. And I have to say that our rehearsal period with him, it's one of the big presence in my artistic life, because I'm very, very thankful for him. And he told me, you know, there are certain people, and me with my sister, they are like this. We have no idea about moral. You know, the moral, it doesn't exist for them. So that's why they say that, you know, I have just the only idea existing for me, it's the money. You pay for me and I do my job. And I have to say that unfortunately we can observe this kind of people last time quite often in our life, also in the big politics and so on. It's very pity, but I will invite you to have a look how this character lives on the stage, and we found some very interesting details in his behavior and how he moves, how he talks with his sister, with other people. I'm sure that it will be interesting for you.
So we're getting off to a great start. We have a prostitute and a man who has no morals. And now we'll turn to Rigoletto, who has his own problems. So Lado, tell us about the character Rigoletto.
Okay, I will speak in Georgian. No?
Sure, why not?
So what I can say about Rigoletto is he's a very unhappy person, like also physically, because he has a hump, he's crooked, and he cannot do nothing, only to make in the Duke Palace, to make the people laughing, yes? And like his job is to be a jester. And it's very, very interesting and very great person in this role, this part. I like very much because it's the many different feeling, many wonderful music you can make, and you can sing in many different colors and many different emotions. For example, first he's like the jester in the Duke Palace, then he's going to home like his great lovely father with his daughter, and then last I saw the tragedy, what's matter with him, that his daughter will be killed. And it's also not easy really to playing this part, this role, and also singing this right emotion in the. But I tried my best, and I want to say that I am happy that we have so great maestro, and always I tell him this. I told him that if I will doing all the words only with you, maestro, all the operas, I will be very happy. Really, really nice. Really. And of course, the stage director Lotfi Mansouri, and I can say this great, my colleagues, and I'm sure that we tried our best, and then we see. Yes.
Then let's talk about the Duke, Giuseppe. Tell us about this character. These are all such fascinating characters, and each character is so different. They're all so different. So the Duke, how is he?
See, my English is not so rich, so I'll speak in Italian. Somebody will help me by introducing. No, il personaggio di Duca è un giovane ragazzo ricco, un duca, che vuole solo divertirsi e senza scrupoli.
The character of the Duke is a character of a young guy who is rich and cares only about amusing himself.
E questo personaggio qua non ha scrupoli, prova di divertirsi anche con le donne dei uomini della sua corte.
He has no scruples and he tries to amuse with all the women of the court.
Ma
Gli uomini non l'ho tradotto.
no.
Because he said also with men, but I don't think.
No, ma ho detto con le donne degli uomini.
Ah, with the women of the men of the court.
Yeah.
My fault. My fault.
This would be a very different opera.
Però questo personaggio qua ha un suo fascino perché sa comportarsi con tutte le donne in una maniera diversa secondo il loro rango, diciamo, sociale.
The role is very fascinating because the Duke is able to deal with certain women in one way and certain other women in a different way according to the social status of these women.
Però questo personaggio, al contrario di Rigoletto, che anche Rigoletto non è meglio di Duca, solo che lui subisce la dramma e per questo alla gente ci dispiace e sembra che è buono, ma non è così.
He says that his character is not too different from Rigoletto because even Rigoletto is a nasty man. Just that the tragedy goes above Rigoletto and there is no tragedy on the Duke.
Parliamo un po' anche dal lato vocale, è un ruolo che ha bisogno di una facilità, diciamo, vocale e un registro, diciamo, ben legato e un acuto pronto, diciamo.
Vocally, it is an interesting and difficult role because it asks for a long range, for a very good top, and a certain kind of voice typical for this role.
Credo che stiamo facendo un buon lavoro e sarete soddisfatti, speriamo.
He thinks that we all are doing a good job and he hopes that you will be happy of the work we are doing.
This is why we call it the 2009 international season, of course. So, now after all these awful people, let's talk about Gilda, who is all goodness and light. She is a young girl, the daughter, of course, of Rigoletto, but I don't want to go too far. So, Ljubica, tell us about Gilda.
I'm sorry because I have the same problem like Giuseppe. I'm not very good in English. I use my Slovak language and my friend can translate. So, Gilda je jedna mladučka, nežná, jemná žienka.
Gilda is kind, young lady.
Ktorá žila v kláštore a iba po príchode za otcom vlastne začína spoznávať skutočný život.
I don't know the word. I don't know the word kláštor. Oh, it's a house for the nuns. Help me.
Oh, convent.
Convent. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so she left. She used to live there in convent, and then she left and started to live with her father. So she started to know real life.
A samozrejme prostredníctvom svojho otca, svojej pestunky Giovanny a nakoniec teda najviac prostredníctvom Duka ten skutočný život spoznáva vo všetkých jeho podobách.
So then, thanks her father and her nanny, and thanks to Duke, she is recognizing the right life.
Mm-hmm.
Prvýkrát sa skutočne zamiluje do muža. Je to pre ňu úplne nový pocit. Nevie si s tým dať rády vlastne.
She fell in love very first time, and it's very new feelings for her.
A je natoľko zaľúbená, že je ochotná nakoniec kvôli tomuto citu aj zomrieť.
And she is so in love that she is ready to die for it.
A vlastne mám túto postavu veľmi rada preto, že mi ponúka okrem tých krásnych lyrických pasáží a duetov a árií aj veľmi dramatické momenty.
I like this part because it offers me not only lyrical but also dramatic moments.
Ako napríklad v 2. a 3. dejstve, kde už skutočne, ako sa povie, ide do tuhého, hej? Že už vlastne ide zomrieť.
Especially in the 2nd and 3rd part when she's going to die.
A ako hovorí moja pani profesorka, ja som bola vlastne stvorená na to, aby som zomierala na javisku, takže myslím si, že táto Gilda je vhodná pre mňa.
My professor of music, she always said that I was created to die on the stage. So I think this role is just perfect for me.
Good. Wow. Well, you know, if this were a movie, you know, and it was marketed or advertised as a story about a man whose job is to essentially pimp for his boss and who has this beautiful daughter hidden away until she's 18 years old, and that the main character is a deformed hunchback. I mean, is it a movie that you would pay to see? You know, I mean, it is a very strange Gothic horror story in a way. And Verdi seems to be very drawn to these kinds of stories because Il Trovatore is that kind of a story as well. There's an interesting thing I want to get Eduardo in on this because there's a story in the book that he has right in front of him by Julian Budden, who died not terribly long ago. He was our greatest Verdi scholar. And he tells about Rigoletto. Verdi and Piave started talking about writing Rigoletto in February or March 1850. And Verdi asks Piave, make sure that we can get this past the censors at La Fenice, at the Teatro La Fenice in Venice. And Piave says, yeah, no problem. Well, in August, Verdi gets a letter from the director of the theater at La Fenice and says, I don't think this is going to happen. What I find interesting is that Verdi writes back and he says, well, I'm sorry, but the opera is practically finished. Now, I don't believe that Verdi has written a note of the opera by this point. But what he says is very, very important. He says, I have already decided on the tinta of this opera. I have already decided what the color of this opera is going to be. What I find interesting about that is that this is part of Verdi's composition process, his creative process, that he had to figure out the color of the opera first, what he calls over and over again in his letters, the tinta. What does he mean by this, Maestro? If you could just talk a little bit about this whole concept of tinta and why it's so important to Verdi.
I will get to your answer. First, let me say a warm hug to all my friends who follow me here in San Diego. Then I'm going to tell you, to read you, something about the opera that you are going to see and to hear. You are going to hear not one of the best Verdi's opera, which is written vocally not for the better, which is archaizing, returning to the style of Mozart and his contemporary. He is totally lacking in invention or novelty. He is not at all the best of taste. It is, the music is, how do you say, puerile? Puerile and ridiculous.
Childish.
Full of vulgarity and eccentricity and barren of ideas. It is Verdi's weakest opera. You see? This is what you are going to see.
To hear.
It is a huge masterwork. It is one of the famous trilogy of Verdi, Traviata, Trovatore, and Rigoletto, that many consider the real masterpieces of Verdi. Otello is something else. Falstaff is Verdi, but developed Verdi. But the real, when we think to Verdi, we think to these three operas. He was completely mature and aware of his greatness. The habit of Verdi was, his philosophy was writing an opera as fast as possible in a couple of months for not losing the continuity of the color, not losing the tinta. The femotinta means color, and color means the correct instrumentation, the correct turn of the melodies, the correct the connection of the rhythm from one piece to the other. He was looking for unity of the piece. And it is famous that he wrote in the beginning only the vocal line, a few hints of the orchestra, the vocal line, a few harmonies, and the bass line, without adding all of the instrumentation of all the rhythms that now we find in what we perform. Very often, he completed the operas while he was rehearsing the opera, let's say 1 month and even less than 1 month before of the performance, according to his development of his ideas, according to the singers that he had. But what he wanted was to have a unity of the conception of the piece. And it's very interesting that we can read something very similar in Puccini. The main work of these composers was not just to invent a beautiful melody. It was important, of course, but this was not the main effort. The main effort was to write something that was perfectly connected with the situation, with the story, with the libretto. And because Verdi was so fascinated by this Victor Hugo drama, he insisted in not changing what the censorship asked him to change, because he had already written the whole opera in his mind. Mm-hmm. He had already the turns of one scene into the other, of how the duet, how this monologue should have been. And this, I think, is something that every great opera composer did, even if they did not know. But Verdi knew it, and Puccini knew it. Verdi is an immense composer. But you must not look for the sublime in Verdi. You find the sublime in Mozart. You find the sublime in Bach. Even in Verdi, in some moment of the Requiem, even in Rigoletto, there are sublime moments. But what is the reason to write sublime music if the character is a jester, is a killer, is a lascivious, you say, I don't know how to translate. I would say humanizer. There is no reason to write this kind of music. So all what Verdi wrote in his life, with some small exception, was something that belonged to the human soul, to the human figure. He felt the suffering of a jester. He felt what to lose the virginity of a daughter means to a man. He felt what Gilda could express after what happened to her. This is the greatness of Verdi. And I think there is no composer in the world that was so great in writing the proper music for the proper situation. I was telling you that he used to write the very last moment, the final. There is a beautiful, not story, because it's something that really happened. The famous La Donna è Mobile is just a pretty vulgar sound. It's a beautiful tune, but it doesn't mean something extremely inspired. He was so secure that this tune will catch the attention of the people that he wanted nobody knows, except of course the singer who had to sing it, nobody knows it before the performance. So he insisted in not playing it to people who didn't belong to the show. And then it was a hit. It was like, I don't know, a Beatles song. Immediately, the day after, all people were singing La Donna Mobile in Venezia. And this is describing how a man of theater Verdi was, and how he was aware of his capacity of writing great tunes and the right music for the right libretto, for the right drama. Then we will have to say something else. Right?
Well, he was very smart. You know, in Broadway, they call this the 11th hour tune, the La Donna è Mobile, because it's at the very end. It's at the top of the third act, and it's just a great, catchy tune that Verdi knew would
at that time they
capture everybody's imagination.
At that time they didn't have movies, they didn't have a Broadway, and so everybody was focused on this was the Broadway and the Hollywood of the 19th century.
But it's also about the bottom line, because if they wanted to hear this aria again, they had to pay for a ticket.
Of course.
So, of course. Verdi was very smart.
And they did many more performances than just the 5 that we are doing now, because there were many people interested in watching and in listening to these pieces. Culture, in that time, opera was extremely important, and now it is important too, but it's a little bit... there is too much television, too much amusement around. At that time, no. Opera was the main show. And a lot of gossips, of course, and a lot of divos. Of course, we have divos here too, but the time...
I wonder if, again, talking to the singers, what was it like to sing the role for the very first time, to sing Gilda the first time? Do you remember the first time that you sang Gilda? And what was it like for you?
It's 14 years ago, so it's a long time. Yes, it was my third big part in my theater in Bratislava, Slovak National Theatre, and was the second from Verdi, Pas Traviata, Violetta.
So you did Violetta first and then Gilda.
But Rigoletto is for me best from Verdi. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I love Traviata, but Rigoletto is much better.
You feel that
the music and whole opera. Here is no one moment without tension, without something strong. It's.
Mm-hmm. You feel it fits the voice, your voice, better than Violetta, or?
The voice, I hope yes. Then must say maestro.
Okay, Giuseppe, the Duke. The first time you sang the Duke.
The first time I sang Duke was 5 years before.
See how well he speaks English.
He's able.
It was 5 years ago in Toronto, in Canada. That was the role that I had dreamed to sing when I began to study classical singing. And when I sang the first time, I was so glad, so happy.
Yeah. So you say the first time you sang the classical singing, did you do any other kind of singing before classical?
Yeah, I have sang rock music before.
Really?
Yeah. And I am diplomated like an electrical engineer. I have studied electrical engineering. Then I thought, oh, why shouldn't I try to become a tenor?
So you must be 60 or 70 years old by now, with all these careers behind you. That's good.
Yeah.
Lado, the first time that you sang Rigoletto, what was it like for you?
It was 10 years ago. But I'm young, not old. And I sang very young, and I thought, I don't know how it's going, but I don't know, the people or some director or managers today, when they hear my voice, it's have the colors, it have the, I'm sorry that I say it's strong, they give me all the dramatic parts, you know, from the beginning. And of course, I sang this part, and after I did so, it will be 5th production here, and I can say that I love this part, and because also how the maestro said, it's Verdi wrote very smart and wonderful. If we take so early his opera like the Macbeth or Nabucco, very heavy. Of course, it's not easy, but he make the breaks for Rigolettos. Then they singing the Duca also, Gilda do it with Sparrow's, but he wrote very smart. That so after performance, I'm feeling always voice is here, and I'm not too tired.
Oh.
And what I can say that I want to repeat this, it's wonderful of part, great opera, and I love this. And I think that I will be older. I think it will be more better and better. That the feeling about with feeling for my daughter, for my and I hope.
Great. Did you have a favorite Rigoletto, a singer that you like as Rigoletto?
Yes, of course I like Giuseppe Taddei. Also Bastianini, many, of course, also Renato Bruso and Puccinis, my favorite, but the colors from this part of Rigoletto, for me, it's my opinion that I like of Giuseppe Taddei. And really, when he sing, you feeling this. I heard in recording, but you feeling this really is like on the stage he's playing or something when it's io voglio mio figlio and su piangi, really is fantastic.
Great. Aruchun, Sparafocile, you've sung the role before.
Yeah, I was thinking now, you know, was in my memories now coming back to my my youth. Let's say I'm now 42, but almost 20 years ago, or let's say 17 years ago, because it's a little bit strange, but the same like Giuseppe. Before I came to singing, I was studying languages and literature in university. I finished it, and I was even working as a teacher of languages and literature. And I discovered then that I have a voice, and so, and I went to the opera studio in the university in Moscow, where I was studying and then working too. And they discovered that I have voice and so on. And they had in opera studio not so big, they have quite restricted repertoire. And they had one of the most popular operas ever written. It's Rigoletto, of course. And the role of bass was still open. And I was casted to do the Sparafocile, being, I know, 24, 25 years old. And it's too early, of course. Was for me too early because my voice was much lighter. I was singing more Mozart repertoire, more Rossini stuff. And I remember then when I sang it in the concert version first and then on the stage, the people, they told me, you know, you are very elegant, Sparafocile. It means it was, of course, maybe compliment to my style of singing because, for example, in duet with Rigoletto, you have to show also certain musicality in the Mozart way and so on. But in terms of character, it was not a compliment for sure. And now, after many years, when I did already several productions of Rigoletto, also very, very unusual ones in Germany, in Austria, and so on, you know, they do always experiments with staging. And I think really also Americans, Puccinis, and so on, so many of them. I have to say that now, being 42, I'm coming back to intensive singing of Puccini. Even in this season, I'm doing 4 different productions. My debut in the Palermo Opera, for example, will be also Puccini. Recently, I came from Ancona in Italy, did also Rigoletto. Afterwards, will be in Genoa, in Italy, one more, in Italian opera houses. So I have to say that it's, first of all, very interesting character in terms of staging. So that's why in this age I think you are ready finally to do both sides, singing and staging. And in this terms of way I'm very thankful to show you my grown and mature Puccini.
Great.
Thank you.
Kirsten.
Let me,
Yeah.
sorry. No. To sing a Verdi opera requires a style, requires a kind of a vocality very specific for Verdi. Have you ever noticed that there are not so many singers, there are but not so many singers that sing Verdi and Rossini? Have you ever noticed that some Mozart singer very rarely sings Verdi? So, to sing a Verdi opera requires a very specific taste, technique, natural kind of voice, a kind of legato which is different than Rossini. And these are very difficult operas for everybody, for the singers, but also for the conductor, because everybody knows them. And everybody thinks that the way they know is the only way to be done. No, it is not true. There is a certain interesting flexibility in changing a little bit the tempo, a little bit of fermata, a little tradition. About tradition, this opera is full of tradition. We are doing a revised critical version. But I have to tell you that I allow to do something, some tradition that was not written by Verdi, but probably was accepted later by Verdi, because it's part of my culture, because I think they really are in the style of this opera. And I am happy of the work that I'm doing. I am happy of the work that my singers are doing. Only one singer is able to sing Rossini and Verdi. Our mezzo-soprano did a beautiful Rossini time ago. But I said it's pretty rare, pretty rare. Good.
So, Kirsten, back to you. Maddalena, the first time you sang it.
Yes,
What were the
well,
circumstances?
I started in my profession very young. I'm talking about the prostitute profession. So the first time I did Maddalena, actually was the first real opera I sang in, believe it or not, and I was about 21 at the time. So I started very young. And if I could, if you'll allow me, I'll just be your comic relief again. Because I remember it was kind of a scary time for me. My tenor had the most glorious voice. It was truly beautiful, nothing like Giuseppe, don't worry, but he was, let me see, roughly 350 pounds, roughly in the ballpark. Okay, so the interesting thing is, after I do the killing of the soprano and whatever, my reward is to go up and lie in bed with the tenor. Yeah. It's very nice, especially this time. But imagine me on a small, I'd say pretty much single bed. Imagine me climbing up the stairs and trying to make room for myself on this with the 350-pound tenor. And, he was so sweet. He was very concerned for my safety, because had I fallen, I would have gone down through the curtain, down onto the bottom of the stage. Okay, so this would have been bad for a number of reasons, bad form. But so I can remember, you know, my fear, my concern. I mean, one of the things I had to do with him too, because he sweated very profusely. So I worked into my role this idea that, you know, she kind of carried a rag around, as it turned out, a sweat rag. And, you know, so I just would kind of mop his face because we had to kiss. Guys, we had to kiss. So picture me. I mean, I learned at a young age, kids. You know, you do what you got to do. But so I would mop his face before we kissed. I made it look real. It was good. But anyway, I was really nervous when I would climb up the stairs and kind of, you know, sexily go into the little room and you know, kind of place myself on this bed. And really, I swear, there was like that much room for my body. And so I would lie on my side and put my arm around his belly and just hold on for dear life until he finally had to get up to sing again. So things are much better for me this time. It's much more enjoyable.
Just to finish up, I'd like to go down the line and just ask each one of you, what's next? Kirsten.
I will head off to Austria, to Graz, to sing Così fan tutte auf Deutsch. Hilf mir, Gott, hilf mir.
Arutjun, what's next for you?
I have afterwards one production. As I told, I have this year many different Rigolettos too. In Genoa, in Palermo, where else? But I have to mention one role which I sang already here, the Fiesco in Simon Boccanegra, and I will redo it in a very good opera house in Toulouse in France.
Oh,
it
great.
will be in October. So it's one very important role for me because, you know, Sparafucile, so it's very nice, interesting role, but the larger characters you can create much more. Thank you.
Okay, Lado.
Yes. Yes, I go after these Rigolettos. I was singing in Berlin, Ballo in Maschera, and Traviata. I hope with Angela Gheorghiu, this is some special performance. And then I go in my country, Georgia. It will be, how is it like, premiere, like premiere film. No, this will be. I did also a movie in Georgia.
Oh.
Yes, it will be. I hope this will be great. It's first that I'm singer, but I'm playing also singer in the movie. It will be also premiere in Georgia, and I hope of course, that you can also say through internet or something. Then I came again in California, neighbor in San Francisco, and I will sing there Tosca. In Tosca, like Scarpia.
Great.
In September, first time, I go in the ARD in Munich, in ARD competition, like youngest jury in the competition, singer competition. It's international singer competition.
Great.
And
You're busy.
yeah,
Good.
yeah, of course. Thank you, dear. Thank you, God. Okay.
Giuseppe, where are you going from here?
From here, I'm going directly to Marseille in France to debut Requiem Verdi.
Ah, wonderful. Maestro.
After Madame Butterfly, here, I will go to Rome for a recording for EMI of a Rossini's arias with the mezzo-soprano Joyce Di Donato. Oh. And then I will go to Houston for an Elisir d'Amore.
Great. And Luba, for you, what's next?
I return finally for a longer time to Slovakia. I have performances in my theater, and with our company we are going with Ariadna auf Naxos around Europe, and then next year I have performances in Hamburg in Germany with daughter of regiment.
Oh, wonderful. Great. Well, I wish we could see all of these productions, but we can't. But we're so delighted and proud that we're going to be able to see you in this production. So thank you so much for being here.